So, what is an alpha male? Alpha male is a term that is used in the dominance hierarchy. And the dominance hierarchy is a form of social hierarchy in which dominance is sought over other members of the group pertaining to resources, access to mating, and other things through means of violence, through means of overt and coercive strategical planning and long-term status establishment. What does all this mean, and what does Islam have to say about an alpha male, so-called? Let's dive into these issues in today's podcast and look at this very important issue in current affairs. Bismillah. There are different theories that try to explain the social phenomenon. We have sociologists like Emile Durkheim and others who have been working on different theories, and they have Emile Durkheim's book Suicide actually is a recommended book if somebody is interested in getting to know more about social theories and whatnot. Erich Fromm, his book The Art of Loving is another recommended book. And so there have been sociologists throughout the history who've been trying to explain the social phenomenon through different theories, trying to explain why people behave in the way they behave. Most of the times, the fields of study, they overlap. For example, Erich Fromm was primarily a psychologist, and he wrote about the sociological phenomenon. And so definitely his works can be called socio-psychological or psychosociological, whichever way you want to look at these works. And so sociologists, academics who are trying to explain the social phenomenon, they often conduct studies about animal behavior and try to, if you like, decipher the human code through their observation of the animal kingdom. And so the studies show that normally in animals, we have this concept of a dominant individual and then multiple submissive individuals. And this is generally true about the animal kingdom. I mean, you can look at the lion prides, you can look at the way the primates form bonds together, the buffoons and whatnot. You can look at other animals as well. And you'll see that usually the pack is led by an alpha, a dominant individual. So the dominant individual would be called an alpha. The others who are submissive to that dominant primate, that dominant individual, would be called the beta. And these are the terms that were coined by different sociologists studying animal kingdom vis-a-vis, when trying to decipher the human mode of existence and conduct in a given social circumstance. So this is actually a theory from the field of biology primarily. It is called the dominance hierarchy. Pecking order, the colloquial term is pecking order. It is a theory of social hierarchy that arises when members of animal social groups interact creating a ranking system. A dominant higher ranking individuals is sometimes called an alpha, and the submissive lower ranking individual a beta. And there are different types of interactions which can result in dominance depending on the species, including ritualized displays of aggression or direct physical violence. But the important thing is that it is based and rooted in violence, the dominance through violence. Now, there was a study primarily by Rudolf Schenkel. He was a sociologist, and he studied some wolves in the Basel Zoo in Switzerland. And then later on, David Mech based some of his work off of Schenkel's work. And they both came up with this theory of an alpha wolf. And they concluded through their observation that a male wolf who is dominant through violence, who engages in battles and dominates other wolves, has better chances at a better mate, a better she-wolf, which then would become his beta, and a better chance at leading a family, leading a pack. But this theory, this conclusion that they came up with was later refuted by David Mech himself. He himself is on the record saying that the book that he wrote should not be printed anymore because this observation was faulty. And so later on they discovered that not necessarily, wolves do not necessarily have alpha wolves. And the most structured and successful kind of pack that is led by a wolf is a wolf who is like stay-home dad, who brings up the progeny, who works hard for the family. And it is not based primarily in violence. However, this dominance hierarchy is true in many other animal cultures. Especially if you look at chimpanzees and other predatory animals, which are primarily predators, you can see this dominance hierarchy becoming very much a fact in their living, in their existence. And so dominance is an individual's preferential access to resources over another based on coercive capacity, based on strength, threat, intimidation. Compare this with prestige, which comes through knowledge, through skills, through abilities. This kind of dominance is primarily rooted in strength, in sheer strength, and intimidation. And so if you translate this into the human world, and this was actually translated into the human world by the pickup artists. There is this whole underground scene, mostly in US and Europe, PUA, which is called PUA, pickup artists. And NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is used in abundance in these groups. What they do is they focus on different strategies of manipulation, different strategies of trying to pick up girls, mostly for one-night stands. And they have extensive studies conducted and done for this sole purpose of how to best pick up girls in nightclubs, in parties, in different social gatherings. What are the things, what are the traits to which women are attracted normally, socially, in social gatherings, and at nightclubs, at different places. And so there is this whole culture of pickup artistry, if you like. And they have excellent manipulative techniques through neurolinguistic programming, using neurolinguistic programming, through using other psychological skills, and coming up with innumerous effective pickup lines, and then following those up through strategical and extremely carefully formed strategies and techniques. And it was these pickup artists that for the first time introduced this term alpha male into the jargon, if you like. And what do they exactly mean when they say alpha male? For them, an alpha male is the one who can pick up any girl, who's not bothered by, what other people think about him, is very dominant, primarily through his strength, not strength of character, but physical strength, strength in terms of sheer physicality, is not afraid to pick up fights, is not afraid to indulge into fights, can pick up fights with anyone, anywhere, is skilled in hand-to-hand combat, also in close quarters combat, knows how to use multiple firearms and whatnot. And so it was primarily their alpha male. What has happened, unfortunately, over the years is that this term has found its use in multiple narratives that are in abundance today in our society. The narratives that you find every Tom, Dick, and Harry indulging into. And this has actually created a lot of problems for many normal people, especially when they are involved in interpersonal relationships often leading to marriage. Because this concept is now confused with the status that you gain through your skills, through hard work, the prestige that you gain through your knowledge, through your hard work, through your tireless, everyday hard work. And it is often thought that women fall for the bad boys, women crave the bad boys. This has seeped into narratives so much that most of the women don't realize this themselves, but because they have brought up by their parents through the usage of these kinds of terms, they do develop some kind of a psychological want, some kind of a psychological need for the crooks. Because being an alpha male is really, let's cut through the rhetoric, let's cut through the facade. Being an alpha male is really, in other words, you're saying that you become corrupt, you become quarrelsome, you become somebody who's violent. And it's definitely not a trait that is coveted by sane and intelligent and well-groomed, knowledgeable people. And so I would not deny that some of the women in these times, in current times, have developed some kind of affinity for these types of crooks, for these types of so-called bad boys. And that is very damaging, because this is not a trait. Being an alpha male is not a trait that should be sought after. Islam is very clear on this. Islam is extremely clear on this. Our Prophet ﷺ said, "Khairukum," the best of you, the best among you, is the one who is the best with ma'ahlihi. Aw kama qala alayhi salatu wasalam, is the one who is good with his ahl, his family. And absolutely, let's make this absolutely clear. Islam does not provoke violence. Islam does not preach violence. It's not a pacifist religion. No. Self-defense, qisas, is very much there. If you're going to come at me, I'm not going to kuffu aydiyakum. I'm not going to just, present you with my other cheek. I'm going to fight back. Islam is not a pacifist religion, not at all. But Islam does not promote violence either. The best traits that are Islamically promoted in a man's personality revolve around makarimul akhlaq, revolve around his akhlaq, his manners, the way he interacts with people, especially with people of opposite sex. In modern times, you can call that being chivalrous. Sure, Islam promotes chivalry in men. There is equality as a whole, which is accepted by Islam. In Islam, everybody is an equal. There is no superiority or inferiority based off of sex, creed, ethnicity, race. There is no superiority or inferiority. So there is an equality among the mankind. We are all equals. But this is not an absolute model of equality. It's not a mindless and stupid kind of equality. There are definitely some roles which are assigned to certain types of biological groups, and that is an absolute biological fact which is undeniable. So somebody who has ovaries and who has uterus is the one who's going to carry a child, bear a child, and get pregnant, right? So it's really, it's 2 plus 2, 4. It's very simple to understand. And so there are certain roles that are assigned, and there are certain responsibilities which come with those roles, and there are certain obligations that come with those roles, and there are certain obligations on the other side, on the other sex, which are absolutely necessary for the betterment of mankind to be carried out. And it is when all of this comes together that you form a coherent whole and the society works flawlessly. And so this concept of alpha male, really being violent towards your family, towards a woman, being on the display of your strength all the time, displaying your strength all the time, physical strength all the time, abusing, cursing, even indulging into violent physical acts and dominating the woman that way. This is absolute bogus. And this is something that no knowledgeable and well-reputed and prestigious human being covets or wants. So really, alpha male is another term for being a crook. And it is something that is looked down upon in Islam, is looked way down upon. And it is something that is prohibited by our religion to indulge into this kind of behavior. For animal kingdoms, sometimes, most of the times, it is necessary because you have scarcity of resources, and so you need to establish your status as a dominant male, as a dominant primate. So, you can have access to resources, all of the resources, and your survival is based on that. So in animal kingdom, and I don't want to go into unnecessary details and non sequiturs to complicate this very easy to understand topic, more than it is necessary. But the point to understand here is that for animals at some level, it might be indispensable for their existence that they dominate others violently. But for human beings, there is no such thing. In fact, Islam says that all the people living in a group, all the people living in a society, they are ikhwa. They are like a community. And they should work for the betterment of each other. Maybe I'll do a podcast one day on what the Quran tells us about how to live our lives in a given community, because there are so many ayats about this. There is Surah Humaza, there are other surahs, chapters, and ayats that actually detail the best code of conduct for a human being living in a society. And none of those guidelines include violence or any kind of dominance. Submissiveness is to Allah Almighty. Nobody is a slave of no other human being. But the kind of physical and violent dominance that is propagated through the terms like alpha male and whatnot, that's definitely definitely something that is looked down upon by Islam and something that is discouraged. So in marital relationships especially, I find my youth often struggling and grappling with these ideas. And so rule of thumb is فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Whenever you find yourselves confused by anything pretty much, intellectual or otherwise, go back to what Allah has said and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you'll find your answers. Our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the best example, is the best example for mankind. And so look at his conduct and how he carried himself, and you'll find your answers. And so really, I mean, Umar radiallahu anhu, you think he was an alpha male who was violently dominating everyone else? Or Ali karramallahu wajhahul kareem. So when my youth turns to these kinds of concepts and I see them getting confused, in fact, I don't understand why this confusion, because Islamic guidelines are extremely, extremely clear about all of these things. And in fact, even if you study, even if you look around, you understand that dominance vis-a-vis prestige, dominance and prestige. Dominance is when you are trying to have a preferential access to resources based on coercive capacity, which is based on strength, intimidation, violence. And prestige is the persuasive capacity, which is based in skills, abilities, and knowledge. You understand yourself that these terms, alpha male and whatnot, these are coined by the scum of the earth, the pickup artists. These terms are operative and punchlines for these crooked people. No one in their sane mind would ever conjure up ideas of dominance in human world. How would you would want to become an animal? Really? Because this is really a very base animal instinct. And like I said, in animal kingdom, this works because you need to have this access to resources vis-a-vis the other animals who are also trying to get this access. So it is really a fight for survival there. But you would bring that into human societies. You want to become animals. So you are called animals. And rightly so. And rightly so. All these animals, the pickup artists, the one night stand people, the deviants, they are all animals, and they operate on animal terms. The problem is that they have been successful in introducing these ideas into our narratives. And that is where the problem begins. Because when you sit down and you talk about these terms seriously, you begin to talk about these terms seriously, then the problem has really started. Otherwise, like, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, maybe 50 years ago, nobody in their sane mind would have taken up talking about these terms in serious manner. So yeah, that's the real problem. So prestige is what is really you're after and you should be after, not animalistic dominance. Alpha male is just another term for crookedness, for being morally corrupt. So yeah, I'll leave you guys with it for today. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منا والممات والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.